So I want you to just picture a massive oak tree, like one of those huge ones standing all alone in a grassy field.
Oh, yeah. Like the kind that easily weighs, what, dozens of tons?
Exactly. Dozens of tons. And its roots are, of course, firmly planted in the earth. But here's the thing. If you were to painstakingly measure the dirt around that tree over, say, decades,
Right.
you would find that the soil hasn't actually disappeared. The tree hasn't taken a single bite out of the ground.
Which is so wild to think about.
It really is. So where did all that physical mass actually come from? I mean, how does it get so huge? That is our mission today. We are doing a deep dive into a deceptively simple question that honestly hides this profound reality about how our entire world functions, which is, what exactly does a plant eat?
Yeah, and the answer to that question forces us to just completely reevaluate our intuitive understanding of mass and, well, growth in general.
Because we're so used to how we eat.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, we are so accustomed to consuming solid matter. Whether you are eating a salad or a steak or just a piece of bread, you're putting physical stuff into your body to maintain it.
Yeah.
So it is deeply counterintuitive to fathom a life form that builds its immense physical structure out of essentially nothing but thin air and sunlight.
It sounds like actual magic. But to get to the bottom of this, we've pulled together a bunch of fascinating sources. We're looking at some foundational botany texts, along with a few really cutting-edge articles on bioengineering.
There's some incredible research happening right now.
There really is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are basically talking about the mechanics of photosynthesis.
We are.
And just looking at the literal translation of the word, it makes sense. Photo means light, and synthesis means putting things together with light.
That is the perfect way to look at it. And the basic recipe, when you break it down, is just beautifully minimalist.
It's like 3 ingredients, right?
Basically, yeah. You have carbon dioxide drawn in from the surrounding air, you have water pulled up from the soil, and you have energy streaming down from the sun.
Just air, water, and sunlight.
That's it. The plant takes those extremely humble elements and manufactures glucose, which is a simple sugar it uses for both energy and actual structural building material. And then, as a bonus, it just throws off oxygen as a byproduct.
It's just so crazy to me. I was trying to relate this to my own physical experience, as a human, and the contrast is completely humbling.
Oh, for sure.
Like, imagine if you could just stand barefoot in your backyard on a sunny afternoon, take a really deep breath, and instantly bake a loaf of bread inside your own body.
That is such a great analogy.
Right, just using the sunlight hitting your skin and the air in your lungs to make solid food. But that is essentially the fundamental magic trick happening in every single blade of grass you step on.
It really highlights just how beautifully alien plant biology is compared to our own. The sheer chemical elegance of that reaction is staggering.
Because it's not an easy thing to do, chemically speaking.
Not at all. You are taking incredibly stable, low-energy molecules like carbon dioxide and water, and you're forcing them to form highly complex, energy-rich bonds.
So they don't want to go together naturally.
Exactly. They really don't. It is a steep uphill battle chemically, and that is exactly why it requires a constant influx of intense solar radiation to drive the process. But you cannot bake bread without an oven.
Right.
That massive influx of solar radiation and gas has to interact with a physical receptor to do any actual work.
Which brings us to the machinery, the actual factory floor. Because if you zoom in past the surface of the leaf, like deep into the microscopic plant cells, you find these specialized little structures called chloroplasts.
Yeah, the chloroplasts are incredible.
They are essentially the solar-powered manufacturing hubs of the plant.
Yeah.
And inside them is the really critical component, which is chlorophyll.
The famous chlorophyll, yeah.
Yeah, right. And for anyone who doesn't know, a pigment is just a substance that absorbs some colors of light and reflects others. And this complex chlorophyll molecule is the true workhorse here.
It absolutely is. Its atomic structure is perfectly tuned to soak up red and blue light from the solar spectrum.
It's acting like an antenna, right?
Exactly, like a microscopic molecular antenna. It captures the energy of those specific wavelengths to kickstart the whole reaction.
Okay, but wait. I'm looking at this ingredient list, and the plant explicitly needs light for power.
Yeah.
But sunlight contains the whole visible spectrum. So if the plant's whole goal is to capture solar energy, if its literal survival is on the line, why on earth does it reflect the green light away?
a really great question.
I mean, that seems incredibly inefficient. Why doesn't chlorophyll just absorb all the light? Why isn't it bouncing nothing back and just being pitch black to maximize energy intake?
It's a brilliant observation, honestly, and evolutionary biologists have debated this perceived inefficiency for decades.
Really? So it's a known mystery.
Oh, yeah. But one leading theory comes down to the stability of the entire biological system. Because think about it. The sun doesn't shine with a perfectly steady, gentle intensity all day long.
True, you have, like, clouds passing by.
Right, you have passing clouds, wind blowing the leaves around so the angles change, and these sudden, intense glares of sunlight.
Okay, so it's variable.
Very variable.
Oh.
And if chlorophyll absorbed every single wavelength, those sudden spikes in solar energy could literally fry the molecular machinery. It would completely overwhelm the system.
Oh, wow.
So by rejecting green light, which, by the way, happens to be the most intense, abundant wavelength in the solar spectrum hitting Earth, the plant is essentially putting on a pair of sunglasses.
Wait, really? A pair of sunglasses?
Yeah. It deliberately limits the peak energy input to a manageable level, so the whole system doesn't just overheat and destroy itself.
That is wild. So the green we see when we look at a leaf or a whole forest isn't just some arbitrary color choice by nature. It's literally the light the plant has rejected. It's a built-in safety mechanism.
Exactly. The plant throws the most intense light away to stay safe, and our eyes just happen to catch the reflection. And furthermore, when you look at the quantum efficiency of chlorophyll, it is exquisitely optimized for the red and blue photons it actually does absorb.
So what it does keep, it uses really well.
Perfectly, almost. It is not just catching light. It is channeling the energy of those specific photons with almost zero loss, directing it straight to the reaction center of the chloroplast.
Okay, so that channels us right into the actual mechanics of the factory floor. Because capturing the energy is just step one. It's the prerequisite.
Right.
How does that captured solar energy actually put things together? According to the sources we're looking at, it's a deeply connected two-stage process.
Yes, a highly coordinated two-step magic trick.
Right, you have the light-dependent reactions and then the light-independent ones.
So let's look at the mechanics of the first stage, the light stage. This requires direct sunlight.
Sure.
A photon of red or blue light strikes the chlorophyll molecule. That photon carries a tiny packet of energy, which hits an electron inside the chlorophyll, and it basically excites it to a much higher energy state.
Like supercharging it.
Exactly. This supercharged electron is then rapidly passed down what biochemists call an electron transport chain. You can visualize it as this microscopic high-speed bucket brigade.
Just passing the energy down the line, molecule to molecule.
You got it.
Yeah.
And as the electron is passed along, its energy is harnessed to do something quite violent, actually. It acts as a molecular wedge to break apart the incredibly stable bonds of a water molecule.
So it's physically prying the hydrogen atoms away from the oxygen atom, all using that excitement generated by the sun.
Yes, and that is a crucial outcome. It extracts the hydrogen and the electrons that it needs to power the rest of the factory.
But what about the oxygen?
Well, the plant has absolutely no use for those leftover oxygen atoms, so they just pair up into oxygen gas and are simply expelled from the leaf as waste.
That is just deeply humbling when you realize that every single breath we take is just us scavenging the microscopic exhaust fumes of a plant.
It really reorients your view of things, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, the oxygen keeping your brain functioning right now is literal trash to an oak tree.
It is a little trash. But, the plant isn't done yet. It has split the water, it released the oxygen, and now it has chemical energy stored in these temporary battery molecules, as well as the hydrogen it extracted from the water.
Okay, so it's fully stocked and charged.
Right. Now it moves to the second stage, the construction phase, often called the dark stage or the building stage. This stage does not need sunlight directly.
Because it's running on the batteries.
Exactly. It can happen in the dark, driven by those freshly charged cellular batteries.
And this is where the carbon dioxide finally comes in. The sources call this specific process carbon fixing.
Yes, carbon fixing. And fixing, in this biochemical context, means taking an inorganic gas floating freely in the atmosphere and chemically incorporating it into a solid organic molecule.
Okay.
And the absolute star of this stage is an enzyme with a very long name. It's called ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase.
Wow. Okay. That's a mouthful.
It is. Fortunately, biochemists universally nickname it Rubisco.
Rubisco. I like that much better.
Me too.
Mm.
You can think of Rubisco as the primary robotic arm on the assembly line. It physically grabs a molecule of carbon dioxide out of the air, and it forces it to react with a 5-carbon molecule that's already present in the plant.
So it's basically forcing an invisible gas to snap onto a solid foundation.
Exactly. And this creates a highly unstable 6-carbon molecule that immediately splits in half. Then, through a really complex cycle powered by those batteries from stage 1, those fragments are systematically rearranged.
Just snapping the carbon atoms together step by step.
Yes, until they finally form solid glucose or sugar.
It's literally like the leaf has two distinct machines running side by side.
Yeah.
Stage 1 is a solar panel that generates electricity and splits water. And stage 2 is a molecular 3D printer that uses that exact electricity. It uses that Rubisco enzyme as a printing arm to pull invisible gas out of the air and just print solid wood and leaves and fruit.
It is exactly like a 3D printer running on nothing but solar power and atmospheric gas.
I just can't get over that. When we talk about the massive physical bulk of a tree, it is literal solidified air. It was recently just drifting around in the atmosphere.
Solidified air. But, as with all things in biology, there's a catch. Keeping this molecular 3D printer supplied with that invisible gas requires opening a door to the outside world.
Right.
And that creates a relentless, high-stakes tension for the organism.
Because nothing in nature is completely free. There is always a trade-off. It really just comes down to basic anatomy, doesn't it? To get the carbon dioxide in and to get that waste oxygen out, the leaf literally has to breathe.
It does.
And it does this through thousands of these adjustable microscopic pores on its underside. They're called stomata.
Yes, which takes its name from the Greek word for mouths.
Right. And they act very much like little mouths, opening and closing.
They do. But here's the dilemma. The interior of a leaf is essentially a wet, humid, saturated environment, whereas the atmosphere outside is almost always much drier.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so every single time those stomata open to take a necessary breath of carbon dioxide to run the printer, precious water vapor just rushes out into the dry air.
It's an impossible dilemma for the plant. You open your mouths to eat, and you risk drying out and dying of thirst. But if you close your mouths to save your water, you risk starving to death.
It is the defining struggle of a plant's existence. It's a delicate negotiation. Now, in temperate, rainy climates, plants can afford to be somewhat profligate with their water. They can keep their stomata wide open during sunny days because the soil is wet enough to constantly replenish the loss.
They just pull more water up from the roots.
Exactly. But when you look at extreme environments, the stakes are totally existential.
Right. Like, what about plants in punishing environments? Let's consider, I don't know, a cactus in the Australian outback or the Sonoran Desert. The midday sun is absolutely brutal. The ground is baking. The air is bone dry.
So it's a totally hostile environment.
If that plant opens its stomata during the day, wouldn't all the water it took months to carefully hoard just flash evaporate in minutes? Isn't opening its mouths in that boiling sun just a death sentence?
It absolutely would be. But desert plants have engineered a stunning evolutionary workaround. It's a biochemical trick called CAM photosynthesis, which stands for crassylation acid metabolism.
Okay, Cam, how does it work?
What they have done is temporarily separate the two stages of the factory. During the scorching day, their stomata are clamped completely shut. Not a single molecule of water escapes. They just wait out the heat.
They just hunker down.
Right. But then, when the sun sets and the temperature plummets, the stomata finally open. They take in huge gulps of carbon dioxide in the dark, much cooler air.
But wait a second, we just said they need sunlight for power? They don't have the sunlight at night to run the first stage, so they can't process that carbon into sugar immediately, right?
Correct. They have the raw material, but they have no power to run the factory. So instead, they fix that carbon dioxide into an organic acid, specifically malic acid.
Oh, interesting.
And then they store it away in massive cellular vacuoles, which are basically just internal liquid storage tanks. They spend the entire night just filling these tanks with acid.
Okay, and then what happens in the morning?
Well, the sun comes up, they snap their stomata shut like bank vaults to protect their water. The solar panels kick on, generating the electrical energy, and the plant simply pulls the stored carbon out of the acid reserves to feed the Rubisco 3D printer all day long.
It's a literal night shift.
Yes.
They stockpile all the necessary raw materials under the cover of darkness so the factory can run safely behind locked doors during the blazing day.
It's brilliant.
It really is. It turns the static textbook equation into this dynamic, living life or death negotiation with the environment.
And when you scale up that microscopic negotiation happening inside a single cactus or just a normal oak leaf, you quickly realize it isn't just about keeping one individual organism alive. It is the foundational engine of our entire reality. It's
Yeah.
actively shaped the entire history of our planet.
Yeah, let's look at the big picture here because this drives our modern world. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's just trace your dinner backward to see the scale of this. Say the food on your plate tonight is a piece of steak.
Okay, a steak.
The steak comes from a cow. The cow built its muscle by eating grass, and that grass made itself out of thin air using sunlight.
Exactly. Every single calorie of energy coursing through your body right now is solar energy that was originally intercepted by a biological producer. That is why ecologists use the term producers.
Because they actually produce new energy from outside the system.
Right. They catch the sunlight and kickstart almost every single food chain on Earth. They are the only organisms capable of introducing new energy into the biological ledger of the planet. Everything else, every predator, every grazer, every human, is just a consumer, endlessly shuffling that initial solar input around.
It's incredible. The entire food web relies on it. But also, the very air in our lungs is a direct product of this exact mechanism. Because the atmosphere of Earth hasn't always been this comfortable, breathable blend of oxygen and nitrogen that we enjoy today.
Not at all. For roughly the first 2 billion years of our planet's history, the atmosphere was completely devoid of free oxygen.
Wow. 2 billion years.
Yeah, it was an alien world dominated by nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and methane. Early photosynthetic life actually used hydrogen sulfide instead of water to get their electrons. But around 2.5 billion years ago, a group of ocean microbes called cyanobacteria evolved this critical mutation.
Okay, the cyanobacteria.
They figured out the molecular wedge needed to split water molecules instead, and water was infinitely more abundant than hydrogen sulfide, allowing them to rapidly spread across the globe.
And because they were splitting water, they started generating oxygen as that waste product, just like plants do today.
Relentlessly. These tiny microscopic organisms pumped out so much oxygen over millions of years that they fundamentally altered the chemistry of the entire planet. First, they saturated the oceans. Then, once the oceans couldn't hold anymore, the oxygen bubbled up and literally flooded the atmosphere.
Which changed everything.
Geologists call this the Great Oxidation Event. It was actually a devastating mass extinction for the early organisms adapted to an oxygen-free world. But it paved the way for complex, multicellular, oxygen-breathing life.
Meaning us.
Yes, meaning us. The breathable atmosphere you rely on is quite literally an artifact, a biological byproduct of ancient cyanobacteria.
We are swimming in a sea of ancient microbial breath. I love that. But the legacy of this deep-time photosynthesis extends even further than the air or the food chain. It actually powers the physical infrastructure of our modern society.
It really does.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When those ancient producers, like the giant tree ferns of the Carboniferous period or the countless trillions of ocean microbes, when they died, they didn't just disappear.
No. In many environments, like deep, stagnant swamps or anoxic ocean basins, they didn't fully decompose. Their carbon-rich bodies were buried under heavy layers of sediment and mud.
Right.
Over hundreds of millions of years, subterranean heat and immense geological pressure cooked that organic matter, compressing it down into incredibly dense energy stores.
Which gives us coal, oil, and natural gas. So wait, if I understand the timeline correctly, when I go to the gas station and I pump gas into my car to drive to work, I am essentially feeding my engine with millions of years old underground sunshine.
That is the literal reality. Fossil fuels are simply the chemical batteries charged by ancient photosynthesis.
That is insane to think about.
And when we combust those fuels in our internal combustion engines or our power plants, we are effectively running the entire photosynthetic equation in reverse. The ancient plants used solar energy to take carbon dioxide out of the air and lock it into solid carbon. By burning it, we violently release that stored solar energy and we return the carbon dioxide gas back to the atmosphere at high speed.
Which perfectly frames the climate crisis. We are taking hundreds of millions of years of carefully sequestered carbon and just venting it back into the atmosphere in a matter of a few centuries.
Exactly.
It is an overwhelming disruption to the natural pace of the biological carbon cycle.
Which actually brings us to this kind of ironic realization highlighted by the research. Despite how incredibly crucial this process is, I mean, how it built the atmosphere, how it anchors the food web and fueled modern civilization, the biological machinery itself actually has some glaring inefficiencies.
Right. I saw this in the sources. The Rubisco enzyme we were praising earlier as the ultimate 3D printing arm, It's surprisingly sloppy at its job.
It is notoriously sloppy among biochemists.
Yeah.
About 20% of the time, Rubisco accidentally grabs a molecule of oxygen instead of carbon dioxide.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And when this happens, it triggers a incredibly wasteful, energy-draining process called photorespiration, which essentially forces the plant to burn energy just to undo its own hard work.
So it's basically making a mistake and having to fix it.
Yes. Because of quirks like this, the overall efficiency of photosynthesis from the sunlight hitting the leaf to the actual energy stored in biomass is often less than 5%.
5%, that's so low. So it's a biological miracle, but a highly constrained one. And this is exactly why it has become this massive frontier for current scientific research, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If scientists can unpack the quantum mechanics of the light harvesting antennas or engineer a sharper, faster version of Rubisco, the global implications are staggering.
Like growing more food.
That's the most immediate goal, agricultural improvement. If we can boost the efficiency of key crops by even a few percentage points, we could drastically increase global food yields on existing farmland. That would allow us to feed a rapidly growing population while actively reducing the need for further deforestation.
And looking beyond just the food supply, researchers are currently trying to build artificial leaves.
Yes, artificial photosynthesis.
Synthetic devices that perfectly mimic the light harvesting and water splitting mechanisms to manufacture clean fuels directly from sunlight, water, and CO2. So they'd be entirely bypassing the need to dig up fossilized ancient sunshine.
Exactly. Understanding this molecular mechanism isn't just about admiring nature, It is about finding the ultimate blueprint for our own sustainable future.
It fundamentally changes how you walk through the world. I mean, the next time you look out your window at a lawn or walk past a potted plant in your living room, just take a second to recognize the unhurried, quiet, brilliant green chemistry happening inside it.
Yeah, it's happening all around us.
Every bite you eat is sugar spun out of air. The oxygen you just inhaled a second ago was borrowed oxygen pried away from water by a ray of sunshine.
The world is vastly more interconnected and honestly far more elegant than it appears on the surface.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. We talked about human scientists trying to copy the leaf to make clean fuels. Let your imagination run with that for a moment.
It's a fun thought experiment.
It really is. If human scientists eventually succeed in mastering artificial photosynthesis at an industrial scale, what happens to our infrastructure? Could the cities of our future act like giant synthetic forests?
Wow. Yeah.
Imagine skyscrapers coated in engineered chlorophyll-like materials, actively pulling our historical carbon emissions directly out of the thin air to power our homes, literally running the fossil fuel cycle in reverse yet again. We might just end up saving our atmosphere by copying the exact same trick the cyanobacteria figured out 2.5 billion years ago. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.